Greetings from Boston and welcome to Tennis Talk Daily. The Indian Wells tournament has begun in earnest, and I want to report a couple of significant results at the outset. First and foremost, the world number 67, Federico Delbonis, defeated the American Ryan Harrison in their first round match, and that means that Roger Federer will face in the second round not Ryan Harrison, as many people predicted, but Federico Delbonis. And that presents an interesting scenario for Federer because Delbonis actually holds a winning record against the great Roger Federer. Well, they've only met once before. It was on the clay courts of Hamburg in 2013, which was arguably Roger Federer's worst year on record, and Delbonis prevailed in that match 7-6, 7-6. So Roger may have some pause coming out onto the court, knowing that he has never quite been able to get the better of Federico Delbonis, and Delbonis might have some interesting confidence coming out onto the court, knowing that he has beaten the great Roger Federer. But in the end, I do not think that the Renaissance Federer, as we call him, is going to have too many problems with Delbonis on the hard courts of Indian Wells. A couple of other results: Shapovalov won his first round match against Berankis. Borna Koric defeated the American Donald Young in their first round match. Karen Khachanov is out of the tournament, upset in the first round. Sujita was also somewhat upset in the first round. On the women's side, the two new mothers coming back, Victoria Azarenka and Serena Williams, both prevailed in their first round matches, and we'll have to just see how they do going forward. They both looked to be in pretty good form, but the competition is going to get stiffer. So, thank you for your viewership. Welcome to Tennis Talk Daily. Subscribe to the channel to get the essential tennis commentary. Give the video a thumbs up if you like what you see and hear. Today I wanted to do two things: continue a discussion we're having about court speed, and also continue a discussion that we're having about the people in Roger Federer's life that have helped make him great. Last time we did a talk on Pierre Paganini, Federer's longtime fitness coach, who has been so critical to his success, and today I want to talk a little bit about Roger's wife of almost 10 years, Mirka Federer. So, with respect to court speed, in order to kind of make our understanding of court speed a little more complete and to clarify a couple of issues. I mean, this is kind of a technical issue, so some of it is sort of hard to understand, but the first factor that determines the court speed is obviously the composition of the court surface, but there are other factors that contribute and influence the speed of the ball through the air and the court speed. The other factors are altitude. Generally, the higher the altitude, the faster the ball will move through the air. Another factor is whether the tournament is played indoors or outdoors. Generally, indoors would be a faster court. The temperature of the air is also a factor. Generally, the hotter the air, the faster the ball moves through the air. At Indian Wells, it's sort of interesting because out in the desert, they have some dramatic differences in the temperature. The temperature drops pretty substantially when the sun goes down, and so you have a situation where in the daytime it's very hot and the ball could be moving very quickly through the air, but then at night it cools down and the balls slow down. Another factor is humidity. Generally, the more humid the air is, the slower the balls will move through the air, and so that's a question down in Miami. But the drier the air, as in Indian Wells, the quicker the balls move through the air. So, and generally the Wilsons, I think, are known to be a faster ball, particularly when compared to the Slazengers, which are slower. The Penns have been known to be somewhat unpredictable, and they've elicited a couple of complaints from the players in recent years. But on the question of the balls and the influence of the balls and kind of slowing down the game, one viewer who goes by the name of LB, who's very knowledgeable about the technical aspects, makes the point that the slower balls have discouraged the big servers that we used to see in the game. And now he argues, LB argues, you need to be a lot taller to be a big server, essentially. Whereas the big servers of the 90s, you know, Pete Sampras, I think he was 6'1", and a number of the other players, Ivanisevic, I think was 6'4", and that's, by today's standards, not that tall. Contrast that with today's big servers, John Isner, Ivo Karlovic. I mean, they're giants. They're like 6'10". That has an effect also on the style of play, because these players can't move around the court very well, and they're not very agile, they're not very nimble, they're not very quick. So that impacts the game as well. I thought it was an interesting point. Federer himself, in an interview after his match with Misha Zverev in the Australian Open of 2017, did note that the balls have made the play somewhat slower. Another individual by the name of Sabin Moss makes a very interesting point, and he argues essentially that the slower surfaces could explain the years of domination by Novak Djokovic. Djokovic, observes Sabin Moss, sort of struggled with the big servers of Federer's generation, which was, 2008, 2009, 2010 period. But particularly at the Tour Finals, once they started slowing down that surface at around 2011, 2012, well, Djokovic started to dominate at the Tour Finals. And then when they sped up the Tour Finals in 2016, well, Djokovic struggles and was not able to do so well. Same thing at the Australian Open of 2017, where they sped up the courts again and Djokovic struggled. Now, Djokovic had a number of issues that he was dealing with, but there is this sort of strange coincidence. There is a kind of lopsided record, a head-to-head record with Federer versus Djokovic when you take into account the speed of the surfaces. On the slower surfaces, like the Australian Open prior to 2017, Indian Wells and Miami, Federer is 1-7 against Djokovic. Djokovic has dominated Federer on the slower surfaces, but on the quicker surfaces, Dubai, Cincinnati, Shanghai, and Basel, Federer is 9-2 against Djokovic and sort of dominated Djokovic on the faster surfaces. So it's a really interesting question, and the question now is, they're speeding up the surfaces apparently in some tournaments, and is this going to prolong the dominance of Roger Federer? It very well might. Is it going to hurt Novak Djokovic? Again, it could. The final point about this, or I got a couple final points, is that, again, the slower surfaces may have contributed to more injuries and may be the explanatory factor behind this spate of injuries that we're seeing right now. After all these years of having to kind of these grueling, long matches, slow matches on these slow courts, folks like Murray and Djokovic and Nadal and even Federer had to deal with a number of injuries. So that's one reason to make the courts a little faster, to prolong the careers of these tennis players. On the other hand, you've got the older players doing well, so I'm not sure that equation quite works, but one thought that I think a couple of viewers had was that, in fact, these slower surfaces have contributed to the domination of the older players and to the inability of the younger players to break through. And I guess the idea there is that the younger players are more prone to make errors in these longer rallies, on the one hand, but also that faster courts would enable would favor the bold, would favor the risk taking that the younger players usually are willing to take, and so there's another factor. And if the courts are speeding up, well, maybe that is going to be one factor that enables the young players finally to break through the older generation. We'll just have to see. So drop some comments. I mean, this is kind of technical stuff, I realize, but it is really relevant. And since we're seeing changes in the court speed, I mean, Sabin Moss's comment is really provocative about how we can explain this dominance of Djokovic through the court speeds. But if so, if it's that determinative, well, it might produce some changes. The speeding up of the courts might produce some serious systemic changes in the game, and it might start to favor the young players, and that might be the factor that enables them to break through. So comment below, let me know. A number of viewers, including Dennis Daly and a viewer that goes by the name of DJ13E3619, noted that it's sort of a compromise out there at Indian Wells because you do have the slower surface, but you've got that fast air. So Federer should be fine there, but you do wonder because Djokovic does hold this pretty lopsided record against Federer on these relatively slow surfaces and has kind of dominated Federer. We're going to have to see how the Renaissance Federer fares. If there's going to be a Djokovic-Federer showdown, it's going to be in the final. And if Djokovic is in the final, folks, well, Federer fans are going to have and Roger Federer himself are going to have a real problem on their hands. Comment below. Let's talk about this more. The question of Mirka Federer. Well, everyone knows how fundamental and critical Mirka Federer is in Roger Federer's life and his career. They met in 2000 at the Olympics, where Roger had a pretty lackluster performance. And Mirka was a professional tennis player herself, was very dedicated to the game, is a great lover of the game, but was plagued by foot injuries that she could not resolve, and she had to retire. Well, Federer calls her the rock in my corner. She is more than you know, just a wife that shows up and kind of supports him like some of the other players have a pretty wife that comes to the matches and supports their husband. No, she's much more than a supporter. She is someone who has dedicated her whole life to Federer's career. She is a fierce supporter of Federer. You have that famous example at the Tour Finals in 2014, where she allegedly got pretty upset with Stan Wawrinka because she thought he was kind of making excuses or whatever, and she called him a crybaby, reportedly, right there for the public to hear, and it was on TV. I mean, I don't think there's footage of her actually saying it. There might be, let me know, but the Federers never denied this. And apparently Wawrinka said that she had done the same thing at Wimbledon that year. So, I mean, she was, you know, heckling Roger's opponents. So that gives you an indication. Now she's kind of cooled down a little bit, and I'm sure they've had a conversation. They decided to put that to an end, but it just shows how fiercely she's dedicated. But the most telling quote that I have from Mirka Federer is a quote that she, from Mirka from a few years ago, maybe it was even, could have been 15, 16 years ago, right when they got together, but, or it might have been right around their marriage. I got to put a date on this quote, but she said basically this: Roger, quote, gave my tennis life back to me. Again, she went out with injuries. Roger gave my tennis life back to me. When he wins, Mirka says, it's as if I win as well. So that just shows you how invested she is in Roger's career, in Roger's success. She wants him to win like she would have wanted herself to win. She lives vicariously through him. And that is just part of a very important dynamic that ultimately really helps Roger. But again, the fundamental point is that she's not just a pretty wife that comes and watches the matches. She is a fundamental part of his success, a fierce supporter who lives vicariously through him, who believes he's the greatest, who holds him accountable, but who also feels as if she wins when he wins. She wants him to win so bad because she wants to win herself. It's as if both of them win. So when he holds those trophies up, it's like she's doing it. Roger gave tennis back to Mirka. She's eternally grateful for that. And in return, she has dedicated her life to supporting the great Roger Federer, and it helps explain why he's so great. So give me any comments you have, additional insights on the Mirka question. I would love to hear from you. We've got a lot more coverage coming up in the next couple of weeks, some exciting tennis. Subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Look forward to hearing from you soon, and be well. Bye-bye.